thanks to everybody for coming. This was a better turnout than I got for my Seattle book signing a couple months ago, so I'm very happy with the turnout. And if more people show up, they'll show up, and we can all glare at them when they walk in the door and pretend that they're like bastards for showing up late. So this is me. My name's Ben Thompson. I have written a website called Badass of the Week since 2004. I got 2 books. The one that's there, the one on the left, Birth of a Legend, just came out in March. And the one on the right, Badass, came out in 2009. They're basically about badass things. Basically, what I've been doing for the last couple of years, I find some historical character or some fictional character that I think is like really awesome, and then I read everything I can read about them, and then I boil their stories down to about 1,000 words, cutting out all the boring stuff and getting to just the good parts. And then I print these books, and people have been paying me to do it, and hopefully will continue to do so for a while. So let's see. My main reason for coming today, giving a talk, I know George R.R. Martin is talking at the San Francisco location, so this is kind of like the B team, the farm squad. My main reason for coming is free lunch, but it's also cool anytime I get invited to go anywhere to talk to people. So hopefully the books are free. You can take some of those. I'll sign them for you after if you want. I'll sign pretty much anything else that you have that you want me to sign, even swords. I wasn't really sure what to talk about. I asked Brian. Brian told me that I could talk about whatever I want. It's not incredibly helpful. Today is Bastille Day. That's also not particularly helpful. There's not a whole lot of badass French things going on aside from the guillotine. So I racked my brain for some ideas, what I could talk about here. And eventually I just figured I'll talk about the one thing that I actually know anything about, which is my books, and the hopefully badass thing is contained within. I know I'm supposed to talk for an hour. I probably only have 20 to 30 minutes of material, so unless you want to go back to work, you can start thinking of some interesting questions, and I'll answer pretty much anything. All right, so here's the cover of the second book. This is the first reading I'm going to do today. I'm going to do one from each book. Like I said, I have no idea how long that's going to take or how proficient I will be at reading my script here. So this is the second book. It just came out in March. The story I'm going to read is on Thor. That's the illustration for him. Inside the books, all of the illustrations are done by guys who did work for Marvel and DC and Wizards of the Coast guys, some Magic Cards, D&D folks. Which was really cool because when I got the deal to make this book, I could just go to people who I always thought their artwork was awesome and be like, you're like my favorite Magic Card artist. Can I like pay you to draw some stuff for my book? And they're like, oh, who's publishing it? I'm like, HarperCollins. They're like, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds good, buddy, whatever you say. So they put together some cool stuff. This one was done by a guy named Matt Haley who used to draw Batgirl and Supergirl. Let's see. So I start every chapter off with a quote. This one is for Thor. No one is so wise that he can recount all of Thor's important deeds. I myself can tell you so many significant tales about him that hours would pass before I have said all that I know. And that is Snorri Sturluson from his book Heimskringla. So this is Snorri. That's the historical interpretation of him on the left. On the right is the World of Warcraft interpretation of him. I include the left one for historical accuracy and the right one for badass credibility. Snorri was basically, why it's a big deal that Thor was, nobody could recount all of his important deeds. Snorri was basically the guy that we know 95% of Viking and Norse mythology was written down by this guy. He was a poet. He spent his entire life collecting all of this stuff, put it all together into a book, a couple books, and that's the bulk of everything we know about Viking mythology. He was also a total bastard. He was a politician. He was a lawyer. He was like a tyrant. He kept trying to seize control of Iceland and was eventually killed by 5 Vikings while cowering in his wine cellar. Okay, so here's Thor. I'm going to do this reading. Thor was the head-smashing Norse god of lightning, thunder, storms, being awesome, and killing giants by hitting them in the face with a meat-enormous magical hammer. The son of the god Odin and the goddess Fjorgyn, Thor was the defender of the heavenly land of Asgard, the toughest warrior among the gods, an original Avenger, best friends with Captain America and Iron Man, and the guy who everybody called on whenever they needed some pompous douche's ass kicked out through his forehead. The life of Thor reads like a loosely associated amalgamation of badass battles and duels, thrown together into one epic narrative of carnage and destruction. This bloody succession of continual ass beatings usually takes place at the expense of the hapless race of the Frost Giants, a group of impossibly large humanoids who Thor intensely detested for a variety of borderline justifiable reasons. For instance, one time this giant architect threw an unnecessarily violent temper tantrum when the god stiffed him on the tab after building a set of impenetrable fortifications for Valhalla, so Thor paid the guy back by caving in his skull with a hammer. Another time, some giant snuck into Thor's house, drank all of his ale, and boasted that he was going to go off and have a rape-tastic threesome with Thor's wife and the fertility goddess Freya, and it took the take-no-bullcrap Norse hero roughly 5 seconds to haul ass back home, crash his glorious flowing locks through the walls of Valhalla like a blonde wrecking ball, and challenged that soon-to-be de-brained D-bag to a one-on-one deathmatch. The dude showed up to the dueling field clad in armor made from stone and accompanied by a 12-foot-tall clay golem, but nothing was going to deter Thor's implacable fury and his insatiable desire for giant homicide. The defender of Asgard was so furious and pissed about the whole "I'm going to rape your wife" thing that the golem took one look at this guy and started urinating uncontrollably, whizzing itself so hard that the liquid piss melted the clay and dissolved the creature down into a fetid pool of failure and defeat and golem urine. That's right, folks. Thor was so crap-your-pants scary that he could make inanimate constructs spontaneously spawn an excretory system solely for the purposes of wetting themselves. In the ensuing battle between god and giant, Thor got a broken-off hunk of whetstone lodged in his head, but he didn't even blink. He just hucked his hammer right through the giant's eye, blowing out its brains like a close-ranged headshot with a sawn-off 12-gauge. In addition to being utterly terrifying, super strong, and rocking a glorious 1980s hair metal mane that was, according to the stories, more beautiful than gold, Thor was also the owner of the legendary weapon Mjolnir. Mjolnir was a fully rad warhammer that never missed its mark when thrown, and always seemed to bring about the vicious blunt force trauma death of anyone Thor deemed worthy of a painful demise. This kick-ass hunk of enchanted runestone was so intensely hardcore that if you even so much as touched the thing without wearing a special pair of iron gloves, the magical energy exuded by the weapon would freak out and melt your hand. While Mjolnir is easily one of the sweetest blunt weapons from mythology, Thor didn't need its super-crushing powers to go out and pummel you into a bloody smear on the asphalt. Like one time Loki was captured by the giant Geirrod and his 3 evil daughters, and in exchange for freedom, Norse religion's patron god of being a total douchebag agreed to trick Thor into venturing into giant land without his signature weapon. Thor showed up, looking to save Loki from imminent peril, and was immediately ambushed. First, one of the ogress daughters angered Thor by urinating in the river while he was trying to walk through it, so he killed her by flinging a rock through her head. Then 2 more giantesses tried to crush him by smashing him repeatedly against the ceiling of their stone cottage, but he got both hands on the ceiling, pushed down, and snapped both their backs with one mighty shove. Then Geirrod himself showed up and started taunting the already berserk Norse god, so Thor grabbed a piece of molten hot iron out of the fireplace and threw it so hard that it went through a solid stone pillar, through Geirrod's torso, and blew a hole through the wall behind him. I like to think that after all of this happened, Thor grabbed a flagon of mead, chugged it in one gulp, and smashed the empty mug down on the ground before making a James Bond-style one-liner and riding out into the sunset like nothing happened. Thor lived in a gigantic 540-room Valhalla-style fortress called Bilskirnir, which was appropriately situated in the middle of the Plains of Strength. His favorite hobbies included drinking mead by the barrel, wading through rivers, riding around in a chariot pulled by horse-sized goats, and making expeditions into uncharted lands for the sole purpose of wasting as many giant asses as he could fling his hammer at, which turns out to be a lot. This guy was so good at getting crunked up on fermented honey and using his mallet to hammer people into the ground like meaty tent pegs that, according to Norse myth, thunder was actually the sound of Thor bashing a guy's head into a pulp, and the tides were believed to have been caused when Thor sucked down half the ocean as part of a drinking contest after a giant magically transformed it into mead. Another good drinking story has Thor getting invited to a feast at the palace of some random member of the frost giant nobility. If you were a giant, you'd think Thor would be the last guy you'd want to have hanging around your dinner table, but apparently this particular household didn't possess the common sense necessary to come to this conclusion themselves, and they thought it might be fun to die painful deaths at the hands of the Norse god of smiting. Interestingly, things were actually going fine until everyone in attendance soon became kind of horrified when during the course of one all-you-can-eat super buffet feast, Thor ate an entire ox. Come on, where's the ox? There we go. Entire ox, ate salmon, and chugged 3 full barrels of mead. When the giants, who, by the way, are largely portrayed in Norse sagas as ogre-like barbarians, gave Thor a hard time about consuming half of their food in the span of a few dozen ultra-manly gulps, the Bane of Giantkin decided that for dessert, he would just kill everyone in the dining hall with a hammer because screw them for talking smack about his etiquette skills. So that's what he did. Thor was also a master of fishing, which seems like it would be kind of incongruous for a guy who shoots lightning out of his hands. Nevertheless, the presumably superconductive god once went with his buddy on a weekend fishing trip aimed at catching the horrifically evil Midgard serpent, a giant sea monster so enormous that its body measured the entire circumference of the earth. Thor rowed out to the edge of the world in a crappy little wooden boat, threw his line in, snagged the beast, and lifted it up out of the water. But just as he was getting ready to bust its skull, Thor's buddy freaked out and cut the fishing line, sending the ghastly monstrosity back below the waves. Thor was so pissed that he punched the dude in the mouth, kicked him overboard, and then rowed home by himself. The maestro of annihilating giants with a hammer also plays a central role in one of the crucial events of Norse mythology, the incredibly bizarre death of the god Baldur. The short version of the myth is that Baldur, Thor's half-brother and the god of being inoffensive, cool, and beloved by everyone, was murdered one day when the prankster god Loki tricked the blind dude into throwing a sprig of mistletoe at him. Why Baldur is so allergic to mistletoe that a relatively unsharpened branch flung vaguely in his direction caused him to spontaneously combust into a cloud of death is somewhat incomprehensible, but needless to say, everybody was pretty pissed off about the whole situation. Thor led the funeral service, blessed his half-brother's funeral pyre, and swore vengeance on Loki. Then, out of the blue, some random jackass dwarf started being disrespectful and talking really loudly during the funeral service, so Thor booted the jerk into a flaming pyre with a swift kick to the balls. I find that this is hilarious. Thor's next mission was to track down Loki and make sure that he was brought to some incredibly painful Viking-style justice. He tracked the trickster god down, cornered him in a river, and when Loki morphed himself into a salmon and tried to swim away, Thor grabbed the fish by its tail and hauled it down to the underworld. Loki's firstborn son was then disemboweled, and the dripping entrails were used to strap Loki down to a huge rock. The gods then positioned a giant disgusting snake over top of Loki so that it dripped super venomous poison right into his eyes like a Chinese water torture device from some sadistic corner of hell. From that point on, Norsemen believed that many natural disasters were caused by Loki screaming out in agony and attempting to break free. If strapping your ex-friend down with his dead kid's intestines sounds a little excessive to you, that's because Thor never half-assed anything in his life, especially revenge. Don't feel too badly for Loki, though. He gets a crack at vengeance eventually, and Thor gets a rematch with the Midgard serpent, but I deal with both of those in a later chapter when I talk about Ragnarok. And that's the Thor chapter. So that's the sort of stuff that I like to read about, and so that's the sort of stuff that I like to write about, and it's horrible and brutal, but I have a very large following among, like, teenage boys. So it's, I guess, better than not having a fan base at all. So, aside from hacking people apart and strapping gods down with their dead children's intestines, being badass isn't always about having muscles and cleaving people apart and destroying them. So in order to balance out the brawn of Thor, I wanted to talk about a badass nerd scientist who asserted himself as badass through his insane skills of being a total genius as opposed to cleaving people apart. Though there's plenty of cleaving people apart in these two books, if that's what you like. I figured that if I was going to be coming here to Google and giving a talk, you guys would appreciate some nerd power. So that's the focus of the second story. All right, so this one is from the first book, which also has a Viking on the cover, though I'm not going to bombard you with 2 Viking stories in a 10-minute period of time. I'm going to talk about Nikola Tesla, who's probably the most badass scientist of all time. This is another piece of art that was done by the same guy, Matt Haley. I think it's pretty unbelievably awesome. And then here's the actual photo of Tesla, so I was very, very happy with him being able to reproduce that mirror image, tracing it on whatever it is, however the heck he did that. And that was kind of the cool thing with contracting these artists was I could just send them like a picture like that and be like, take this guy and make him look like badass with like lightning and fireballs flying around. So it was cool to be able to do that because I'm not talented at all in that department. So start this with another quote. This one is a quote from Tesla directly. By scientific application, we can project destructive energy in thread-like beams as far as a telescope can discern an object. The range of the beams is only limited by the curvature of the Earth. Should you launch an attack in an area covered by these beams, should you say send in 10,000 planes or an army of 1,000,000, the planes would be brought down instantly and the army destroyed. And now Tesla was a guy who claimed that he actually was capable. He actually had the schematics in his head to produce a weapon that would do this. He thought it would end war, but it would probably just make war even more horrible. So nobody knows if he actually could do it or not. When he died, the FBI confiscated all of his property, and they didn't find any details on this. But this guy had such an insane photographic memory that who knows, he might have actually been capable of it. Okay, so I'm going to do the reading on this, and then I'm out of material. So we'll do questions, or you guys can go finish your lunch, or I can go get my free lunch. Okay. Pretty much everybody, even remotely associated with strategy video games, has heard the name Tesla. The Serbian god of lightning's omnipresent, ever-zapping coils have been ruining the lives of digital allied soldiers and jibbing US war machines into spare parts since the release of Command & Conquer Red Alert in 1996. But surprisingly few people these days are familiar with the life and times of one of humankind's most eccentric, badass, and volumetrically insane scientific super freaks. I lost my microphone here. I'm not used to being wired up to things, so to forgive me. Okay. First off, Nikola Tesla was brilliant. And not just like Ken Jennings Trivia Master brilliant either. I mean like, holy Jesus, my head just exploded from all the awesome brilliant. The Croatian-born engineer spoke 8 languages, almost single-handedly developed technology that harnessed the power of electricity for household use, and invented things like electrical generators, FM radio, remote control, robots, spark plugs, fluorescent lights, and giant-ass machines that shoot enormous brain-frying lightning bolts all over the place. He had an unyielding steel-trap photographic memory and an innate ability to visualize even the most complex pieces of machinery. The guy did advanced calculus and physics equations in his head, memorized entire books at a time, and successfully pulled off scientific experiments that modern-day technology still can't replicate. For instance, in 2007, a group of lesser geniuses at MIT got all pumped up out of their minds because they wirelessly transmitted energy a distance of 7 feet through the air. Nikola Tesla once lit 200 light bulbs from a power source 26 miles away, and he did it in 1899 with a machine he built from spare parts in the middle of a godforsaken wasteland of a mountain range. To this day, nobody can really figure out how the hell he pulled that crap off, because 2/3 of the schematics existed only in the darkest recesses of Tesla's brain. Of course, much like many other eccentric giga-geniuses and diabolical masterminds, Tesla was also completely insane. He was prone to nervous breakdowns, claimed to receive weird visions in the middle of the night, spoke to pigeons, and occasionally thought he was receiving electromagnetic signals from extraterrestrials on Mars. He was also obsessive-compulsive, and he hated round objects, human hair, jewelry, and anything that wasn't divisible by 3. He slept just 2 or 3 hours per night and remained celibate for his entire life. Basically, Nikola Tesla was the ultimate mad scientist, which is pretty rad. Another sweet thing about Tesla is that he conducted the sort of crazy experiments that generally result in hordes of angry villagers breaking down the door to your lab with torches and pitchforks. One time, while he was working on magnetic resonance, he discovered the resonant frequency of the Earth and caused an earthquake so powerful that it almost obliterated the 5th Avenue, New York building that housed his Frankenstein castle of a laboratory. Stuff was flying off the walls, the drywall was breaking apart, and cops were coming after him, and Tesla had to smash his device with a sledgehammer to keep it from demolishing an entire city block. And yes, I reused that from the previous slide. Later, he boasted that he could have built a device powerful enough to split the Earth in 2, and nobody dared him to prove it. Tesla also ordered the construction of the Wardenclyffe Tesla Tower, a giant building shaped like an erect penis that would have housed the largest Tesla coil ever built. The massive structure, ostensibly designed to wirelessly transmit power, has been cited as a potential cause of the mysterious 1908 Tunguska event, a 10-megaton blast that detonated in the wastelands above central Russia, completely deforested everything. Okay. That was effect with the 10 megaton blast, alarms going off. It's a true multimedia presentation. So yeah, Tunguska events, a 10 megaton blast that detonated in the wastelands above central Russia, completely deforested everything unlucky enough to be located within 830 square miles of the blast site, and left an eerie glow that could be seen in the skies above Europe for several days. While nothing has ever successfully proven Tesla's involvement in the ass-destroyingly huge explosion, it's pretty awesome that this guy could have potentially detonated a weapon 1,000 times more powerful than the nuclear bomb that destroyed Hiroshima, and have done it before they'd invented the submachine gun. During his adventures blinding half the world with science, Nikola Tesla harnessed the power of Niagara Falls into the first hydroelectric power plant, constructed a bath designed to cleanse the human body of germs using nothing but electricity, and created a 130-foot-long bolt of lightning from one of his massive coils. It's a feat that, to this day, remains a world record for man-made lightning. But perhaps the most badass invention was his face-melting, tank-destroying, super-secret atomic death ray. In the 1920s, he claimed to be working on a tower that could potentially have spewed forth a gigantic beam of ionized particles capable of disintegrating aircraft from 200 miles away and blinking most people out of existence like something out of a Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers comic. His weapon, known as the Teleforce beam, allegedly shot ball lightning at 60 million volts, liquefying targets with enough voltage to vaporize steel, and while it could shoot further than 200 miles in principle, its effectiveness beyond that range was limited by the curvature of the Earth. Luckily for all humans, this crazy crap never came to fruition because most of the schematics and plans only existed in Tesla's head. And when he died of heart failure in 1943, little hard data on the project existed. Still, J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI confiscated all of his personal effects and locked them away anyway, just to be safe. Despite being incredibly popular during his day, now Tesla remains largely overlooked among lists of greatest inventors and scientists of all time. Thomas Edison gets all the glory for discovering the light bulb, but it was his one-time assistant and longtime arch-nemesis Nikola Tesla who made the breakthroughs in alternating current technology that allowed for people to cheaply use electricity to power appliances and lighting in their homes. These two constantly fought about whether to use alternating or direct currents. Their bitter feud resulted in both men being snubbed by the Nobel Prize Committee. But ultimately, Tesla was the one who delivered the fatal kick to the crotch that ended the battle. At the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago, his AC generators illuminated the entire experience, marking the first time that an event of that magnitude had ever taken place under the glow of artificial light. He also demonstrated how safe AC power was by running 200 volts of electricity through his own body just to be awesome. Today, all homes and appliances run on Tesla's AC current. Nikola Tesla was an incredible super genius whose intellect placed him dangerously on the precipice between great scientific mind and utter madness. He held 700 patents at the time of his death, made groundbreaking discoveries in the fields of physics, robotics, steam turbine engineering, and magnetism, and once melted one of his assistant's hands by overloading it with X-rays, which isn't particularly scientific, but is still pretty cool. And honestly, if there were one man on the planet who was ever capable of single-handedly destroying the Earth through his insane scientific discoveries, it was probably Tesla. That alone should qualify him as a pretty righteous badass. So that is end of slideshow. So that's all I have. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you just want me to read through all this stuff once more so you can keep sitting here and not go back to work, I'm cool with doing that too. So yeah, if there's any questions or anything along those lines, otherwise.
So have you actually been updating your web page since 2004?
Yep, never missed a week. There are some that I've pulled down off of the website. They're not active anymore just because, like, in the first year of doing it, it was like, this guy was awesome because he was really cool. And so those are so terrible that when I migrated to a new server, I just killed the link and it's still...
Seems like you must have run out of obvious choices pretty early on. How do you find
It's pretty cool. There's actually a lot of pretty big names that I still haven't touched yet, and I kind of want to save them for stuff like I have it's all original characters in the 2 books. So some of the real big names I hold on to them in case something awesome comes through and I can get paid to write them rather than do them for free on the website. But it's actually been pretty cool. Like in the first year or 2, I had people that I studied history in college. I studied it and I was really into it in high school and right after college and. I had a list of names that was maybe 30 people long that I wanted to write about. But within like that first year, I started getting a lot of email through the website. People who were like, oh, this is really cool. You should look at this guy. Or somebody will write me and be like, oh, I'm from this tiny country. This person's our national hero. There's not much about him in English, but here's his story. So it's almost become kind of like a community project where like people send me. I get 25 to 50 emails a day, and 3/4 of them are like, hey, you should write about this guy. And at this point, like I've got a list on my desktop of like 1,300 names of people that I could write about, and just from weird stories that people have sent me. And I've heard of a lot of these people email me every day, but it's cool that people want to get involved, and I'm not always going to be able to get to the stories that people want me to write, but I like being able to look into those people for my own personal usage.
How do you find the information about the people you want to write about?
A lot of research. I spend a lot of money on Amazon, and one of the things that has actually been huge for me was Google Books. Like I started writing the first book around the time that Google Books was starting to. I first heard about Google Books as I was starting to write my first book, which I guess was 2007 or something around that time. And it's just amazing, like some of these, like Harvard and University of Michigan and some of these schools that are out there, and they're scanning these materials that you would have to travel to DC or Cambridge and go in the special collections department where they have like the white gloves. And it's amazing to have some of that material digitized, not only so that you can read it from Seattle, but also that you can search the text. If there's one obscure character that you want to write about and he's referenced like 3 times in history, it's cool to be able to just put that into Google Books and get legit book sources. It's a lot of research. What I try to do is I try to make sure that everything I want to make the stories interesting and fun and kind of cool to read, but I don't want to sacrifice any of the accuracy. So I don't put anything into the books, especially unless I can verify it in 2 sources, two books, not like Wikipedia or something. So, and Wikipedia, by the way, is like totally evil because like they'll have stuff like. I'll be going through, like sometimes when I finish writing the story, I'll go through the Wikipedia and I'll be like, if there's some crazy thing that I missed, like I wouldn't want to like leave it out. So if there's some kind of, it's kind of good sometimes for getting leads. Oh, this person once ran for Congress or whatever. You didn't know that before, so I'll go check that out. But they'll have references cited in line, and you'll click on the citation and it'll give you the book and the edition and the page numbers, and then you'll find that exact book and reference and page number, and it's not even talking about the person that like the article's on. Just like horrible stuff. So I don't. Yeah, it's all books or Google Books, basically. And then there's a ton of references in the back of each book as to where all the links that I went to. Yes.
So I was going to ask about your favorites, like most badass real person and then fictional.
Well, it's very difficult for me to pick favorites. So like Badass 1 is like a top 40, and this is like a top 40 fictional. When I started writing both of these, I had a list of 100 people that I thought would fit in there, and then trying to whittle it down from 4 to 40 is kind of like trying to figure out like which finger you want amputated or like which of your kids you want to like sacrifice to the gods. It was very difficult for me to get it down even to 40. I feel like I could do 5 or 6 books on each topic and still like have A-list characters to write about. The guy I like to talk about the most when I'm talking about what I'm doing with Badass of the Week and with the books is there's an Irish warrior named Wolf the Quarrelsome. And Wolf was this Irish barbarian who fought the Vikings in 1100 or 1000 or sometime along those lines. And basically, like the Vikings came to the island. This guy served the High King of Ireland. He led this battle, he defeated the Vikings, but as some of the Vikings were fleeing, they found the king of the Irish, and they beheaded him while he was in his prayers. So this guy hears about this, tracks them down before they leave the island, before they finish retreating, finds the guy who assassinated the king, kills all that guy's bodyguards by himself, cuts the guy's torso open with an axe, and ties like one of his intestines to a tree, and then like forces the dude to walk around the tree until like he dies. So this guy, like, he contributes nothing of value to history. He doesn't, like, produce anything, any kind of, you know, he has no significant lasting effect. The Vikings come back, they conquer Ireland, whatever, you know. But that's the kind of story that when you're reading the history of the High King of Ireland, oh, he was killed, and then some guy found, like, the Viking that killed him and disemboweled him. I was like, okay, well, let's hear more about this guy. So, you know, I try to dig up people like that, and he only really appears in history like 3 or 4 times doing different badass things. So I love finding stories like that, and just trying to find as much as I can about these crazy people and write about them.
In your writing, do you differentiate between the badass guy and criminals?
Yeah, I try to. You know, it's you know, I don't write about like serial killers and stuff. So, you know, I guess, you know, I've got people like Vlad the Impaler in there who are just these horrible human beings. But I guess when you're like impaling people in like the 13th century, you're far enough removed that you can like make jokes about it without sounding like a total bastard. So, you know, more recent like serial killer types, you know.
Yeah, you know, people can do extraordinary things. They can do things extraordinarily good, or they can do something that's extraordinarily bad.
Yeah.
So I would be worried if my kids don't read some books like telling how to kill people.
Yeah. I mean, there's some of that. But you know, I don't think it's you know, you see all kinds of violence in TV, and they're going to be exposed. You know, a lot of kids are going to be exposed to violence and things. So, if there's children in the audience when I'm doing a reading, I'm telling them. I usually tell them not to use this as a how-to guide.
Are there any other groups you don't do? Modern serial killers.
Well, I've written about a serial killer too, actually, but you know, I try to avoid it because it's just tough. Some subjects are like pretty heavy. You can't really write about them without, you know, just sounding like you're really being insensitive to just being basically a bastard. So I don't usually write about too many serial killers. I have a hard time writing about like Nazis. You know, I haven't really done anything with like civil rights in America or the Holocaust. I mean, take the Holocaust, there's so many just amazing stories of like brave people standing up and doing these unbelievable things, but I don't really know that you could write about it next to, you know, and put it in a book next to that chapter on Thor and then have it sound like you're not like, you know, being disrespectful. So there's certain things that I just feel like I couldn't really touch.
Just a really specific question. I've heard some skepticism about the account of Tesla's earthquake machine. I was just wondering what evidence you came up with.
Well, there is, and same thing with Tunguska. There was a lot of people saying that was probably a meteor. Basically, like, I really want it to be true. So, and I found it in 2 or 3 like legit books, like his biographer mentions it, and you know, it's a pretty popular story involving him, and a lot of the research, you know, about the earthquakes, about how it might not have happened, was pretty recent, and you know, like I said, like I found it in 2 or 3 legit sources, so I reprinted it. And what I like to say is that if it's wrong, it's because my sources are wrong. That's like my way of passing the buck. If it's cool and it's associated with them, I'm gonna do everything I can to include it. And if it's really touchy, like I wrote about this guy from Chile who was a warrior, like a Mapuche Indian warrior who fought the conquistadors, and the conquistadors captured him and they cut off both his hands. And then there's a story where he had swords like tied to his hands and went back and like fought them with like Wolverine arms. And I wanted it to be true so bad, but I could only find it like 2 or 3 sources, and they were really unreliable. So, you know, I included it, of course, in the story I wrote about him, and then I put a little note in there that was like, this could be bullshit, but but I really hope it's not. Any other questions about? Yeah.
Tell us about how you got started doing this and the website.
Mostly I worked a horrible desk job right after college that was just completely wasting. My brain was like melting out of my ear because, you know, it's just basically like administrative assistant. Like I was like a personal assistant for like a faculty person, and it was pretty mind-numbing. So I had, you know, we didn't teach summer courses, so the faculty would all leave over the summer, and I'm sitting there by myself in this office because somebody has to be there in case somebody walks in or calls. There's no courses, there's nothing for me to do. So I'm sitting there, and I just started putting these. They were only like 2 paragraphs when I first started, and just posting them to this website and emailing the link around to my friends. And I was getting 7 hits a week for like the first like 4 months of the website, which was like me twice and like my 5 friends. So it eventually just kind of caught on randomly, and people started following it, and the next thing I know, I'm getting like 100, 1,000, and I get like 2 million hits a month on the website now, which is like it's an unfathomable number to me. I'm like, I know I'm not refreshing it that much just to like pad my ads. No. But
Have you ever contributed to or collaborated with Cracked.com?
Yep, I did a piece for Cracked to promote the first book. Cracked was actually the reason I wrote the first book, because I was doing this all, posting it all for free, and I didn't even have ads or anything. I've got some Google ads up there now that are decent for me. And and then I started seeing that they were posting all of this stuff like badass presidents, and I was like, I wrote about 4 of these 5 guys. They're cribbing all my jokes. So I was like, okay, somebody's gonna get paid for this. It should be me. So that's when I pitched it as a book. And this was right after like Maddox was like the #1 bestseller for like 10 weeks on Amazon or something. So I submitted it I just sent my website and like a little query letter to an agent that I found randomly on the internet. And he calls me up. He's like, don't show this to anybody, and we're gonna try to pitch this as a book. So it ended up working out pretty well for me. And I was looking him up because I was thinking like, well, he hasn't asked me to like wire funds to Kenya yet. I don't know what the deal is, but why would he call me up and tell me this? The next week he calls me up and he's like, oh, we'll put a proposal together. So we put the proposal together. He sends it out. He's like, Skyhorse Publishing no, not Skyhorse. Some publisher that's like even like that I've never heard of before. They're offering you $500 for the book, and I was like, sold. And he was like, no, let's wait. Let's see what else we can get. You could hear him like in slow motion, like no. So it just ended up taking off from there. And to promote the first book, I did a piece on last stands, one-man last stands, just like 5 people who like causes lost and just a huge army of people opposed to them, and they just are standing there with an axe or a gun or something trying to hold off like the entire army by themselves. And those are the kind of stories that I love anyway. So other questions?
Have you ever thought about branching out into fiction?
I'm trying to. I've just started working on the 3rd book, and that's taking up most of my time because I have a deadline on that and I'm getting paid to do it. So fiction's a little bit of a different beast where you have to write the book first. Nonfiction, you say, I've got this great idea for a book, here's 3 writing samples, and they say, great, we'll give you this much money to have it ready for us by this period of time. Which is great because I'm like a total procrastinator, and I need like the first 6 months to do nothing and the last 6 months to like work my ass off. And so with fiction, you have to have at least like 200 pages written or something and then submit it like that. I was tooling around with it between the time that I finished promoting this and I started writing the new one. But it's only like 20 pages or 30 pages. It's not enough. But I'd like to do that. I'm also taking a screenwriting class in the fall at UW. Try to work on that a little bit. We're trying to pitch this as a TV show, but that's not really fiction. So we'll see.
How do you handle the 2 to 3 sources thing with fiction, whether it's, this guy made it up, one source?
Yeah, exactly. Fiction's a totally different thing. Like, because fiction, nobody's going to come back to you and be like, Thor didn't actually throw that through the guy's stomach. It's like, Thor didn't actually do anything, but he's not real. So, that was one of the fun things about doing this book was that, I think I prefer doing the historical characters, but it was a lot of fun to do the second book because the myths are insane to begin with. Like some of these stories are just like completely crazy, over the top, out there stuff, and some of them have one source, right? If you want to know about Samson, you read the Bible, and that's your source. Or you want to write an article on Dirty Harry, you watch the Dirty Harry movies, and that's your source. So with fiction, you have a little bit more leeway to go back and forth. If you're going to write an article on Batman, you would have to pick an origin story and not like the 800 that exist for him. So it's cool because you can just take your favorite. Other.
Is some of your book canon available on the internet?
I I think it's on. They're both on Google Books, and there's a. I think there's a preview on Amazon. It's through. There's a Kindle version, but you have to pay for that.
I just have a side question. I mean, nowadays, what I kind of notice that people are spending less and less time on the books, spending more time on the internet.
Yep.
And does this have some influence on you folks of deciding whether to put in material on the internet instead of paper?
Well, the cool thing with this was that, it kind of worked the other way for me, was that like these internet people who have websites were getting books published and were becoming bestsellers because they had this pre-installed fan base at the website, and then books are getting killed. Authors who have published huge series are getting killed. They're not like selling books. They're having a hard time getting the deals. So at the time I was pitching this, the book guys were looking for people who were on the internet and hadn't published anything before, and so that worked out pretty well for me. What I wanted to do was to try to find a cool way to I had this pre-installed base of people who have read, and I've got a lot of feedback, and these are my favorite articles on your website, blah, blah, blah. So for each of these books, I included like my top 10 off the website in terms of like feedback from people and hits that I'd received, and it was posted on StumbleUpon or it was posted on Reddit or something. So I included the top 10, and then I did 30 new ones that aren't available on the web. Just because if you're going to spend $17 on it, you should get something that you're not going to be getting, that you can't get for free. There's no point in paying for it. You're not going to pay for the, just the artwork or whatever, just to be able to hold it. So,
I don't know whether the internet has some paid service that allow people to come in to read some books online.
it's possible. I mean, I know there's a Kindle version of this, and like I said, the top 10 from the website are on there. And if I drive traffic to the website, that's still, the website traffic actually pays me. I see more of that income than I do of my royalties.
And especially for these kind of materials, people can be very interested in when they comment on it. And nowadays, when I buy a book, I would normally leave a comment on all the books.
Yeah.
If you do it on the internet, there's a lot of shares.
Yeah, yeah. The tricky part is, all that is basically Harper's owns it all. So they, I think they would have to, if I was going to put this on, it would have to be through them, and I don't think I would see very much of the benefits from that. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming, and I'll sign books and stuff.